Alrighty, so here's our lesson 16 agenda. Going back to Futura, which is what we started our class with. That's what I introduced as my favorite typeface. And since we're focusing on sans serifs, I thought it would be appropriate to come back to it. I didn't really talk a whole lot about it, but it's one of the most popular sans serif font faces of the 20th century. It was designed by It was created in 1927. So just like Accident Grotesque, it's a really old font. It's almost 100 years old. And it has a really long legacy of being used to produce beautiful content. If you're interested in Paul Renner, he is responsible for 2 type theory books, obviously also from the early 20th century. They might be worth investigating and checking out. More recently, Futura is a hallmark of a really important conceptual and contemporary artist named Barbara Kruger. If you've taken my Art 53 class, she's in the list of designers / artists that I advise my students to research and reflect on. Barbara Kruger basically uses or leverages Futura and Helvetica in her artwork and design language. She started off as a designer and she worked in New York, and I believe that she was in the advertising industry. She eventually became and evolved into a really influential, really popular conceptual artist. If you look at her work, this is sort of what her work looks like. You'll notice that it looks a lot like the Supreme brand. And basically Supreme copied her aesthetic and turned it into a marketing device or a brand to profit and make money from it. There's a video that I curated for you called Supreme's $1 Billion Ripoff, and it basically deals with this story that Barbara Kruger and Supreme are intertwined in. This little story deals with is she decided not to sue them, but what's interesting is that other designers, other entities started developing work that was also very similar, and Supreme wanted to sue them. So Barbara Kruger basically said, if you're going to sue them, I'm going to sue you. And they basically backed off on the lawsuits. So it's a really interesting story, and especially if you're thinking about copyright and trademark infringements, who owns what, stuff like that. It's a really interesting sort of topic to research. There's a video that sort of ties into that. There's also a couple of videos that just focus on her and her artwork. She does a lot of installations. That's sort of what she's focusing on right now, and it's still very type-based. It's very text-heavy. Really cool stuff, really interesting. I love her work. I think that she's a genius, that sort of thing. As we move forward throughout the rest of the quarter, I am going to start focusing on artists and designers who are known for their use of typography, not necessarily as being a typographer. We'll continue to have these little font focus dialogues where we sort of reflect and analyze a very specific typeface, something that's really important from a historical context. We're going to start looking, though, at artists and designers who leverage these typefaces. And then at the end of the quarter, we'll also look at some design for good type information or type content. Check this stuff out. I think you'll find it interesting. I think it's really interesting. She's awesome. She's amazing. Definitely worth being aware of and becoming familiar with who she is and what she does. And I think that she's a great inspiration for designers, artists, and people who want to be a creative force in some sort of way. So she's really cool. All right, so the rest of our conversation for today is going to focus on 2 topics. I need to wrap up my looking at InDesign conversation. So last time we met, we were talking about text wrap, and we were sort of still threading and weaving the text. We wrapped up our conversation about making styles. We looked at making a character style and how it works, where it fits in the design process and in the construction of a document. Today, I'm going to look at setting tabs, which is a very unique or a very specific set of tools that are sort of hidden within the software. And then we're also going to look at pull quotes, something referred to as a pull quote, which is basically similar to a caption, but it's much larger. It's sort of used as a point of emphasis. So we'll look at how pull quotes might work or how you might want to weave them into a document. The second part of our conversation is going to deal with an introduction to the book that I've been talking about all quarter long, Typographic Systems. If you haven't looked at the book yet, I highly advise that you open it up. And basically, I'm asking you at this juncture to read the intro and read chapter 1, which is the axial system. It's very image heavy, so it's not like it's going to take you a really long time to get through the content. It should basically be about a 20-minute, 30-minute read if you're really like taking your time and analyzing the images and looking at the thumbnails that are shown. So hopefully you've taken a look at that, and we're going to look at some experiments and how the axial system should work. I'm going to present that to the class. And then if you guys have any concerns or questions, we can sort of have a dialogue about, some of the possibilities around it. I do have a homework assignment that I am assigning today, which is basically the InDesign file that I've constructed. I'm asking you to make one of your own, similar to what I have shown. I will include a PDF of what I've constructed, or what I would have finished constructing today. I'll upload that, use that as an example, and I'm just going to say, make something similar to this, has some of the same rules and expectations that I've gone over. And the handout, once I complete the InDesign exercise, I'll go over the handout for the homework assignments. That way you understand what the expectations are for that.